I think that the only reason why Wuthering Heights as a book was ever popular and ever was well received by anybody is because they back then in the distant past people didn't have access to better books about similar things. A Song of Ice and Fire is full of unlikable, hateable characters, and yet it is extremely well written. And not all of the characters are poorly written. I mean, you do eventually, you start to see that there are stakes involved where some of the more likable characters might just, get what they have, the vengeance that they deserve. With Arya, like for instance, in the House of the Undying and all this other stuff. Wuthering Heights, by contrast, doesn't put any of its likable characters in a position where they might actually be able to get revenge. Like Isabella, for example, is never going to be able to get revenge on OG Heathcliff. That's not going to happen. To me, that makes. I mean, this is more than. This argument is basically a standard that I'm going to hold it to. But at this point, it's if if a story having bad characters doesn't unlikable characters doesn't make it a bad story, then what could make it a bad story then? And to me, it's like, well, are there any prospects where the characters that are actually likable are able to get their comeuppance in the story? If no, then it's a bad book. And to me, in Wuthering Heights, there are no prospects that any of the likable characters will be able to get their due comeuppance for anything or see justice whatsoever. And therefore, if I could give it 0 stars on Goodreads, I would. It's a vile, terrible, awful written book that is a laborious chore of prose to get through. Much of if you are not deeply familiar with old or middle English, it's going to be a chore to actually get to slog through this challenge. On top of that, Heathcliff is a vile, abusive, narcissistic bastard, and so is Catherine. All the characters are incredibly abusive towards each other. Kathy, basically gave up love for the purpose of, being rich and everything, and she thought she was above Heathcliff, and he found it so insufferable that he took it out on her, the person that he was supposed to love, and everybody else around them, and the Moors. They all just lash out at each other constantly and consistently, and I can't understand why anybody would like this shit. At least with A Song of Ice and Fire, our likable characters are, positioning themselves to take revenge and get their just comeuppance in the series. It does look like there might be a happy ending, if bloody ending. Unfortunately, with Wuthering Heights, we don't have any prospect of that. Basically, in the time of Wuthering Heights, we did not have books like A Song of Ice and Fire. If we did, we would never have thought Wuthering Heights was any good, because it isn't.